Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And thank you for joining us today on our webinar on the introduction to neurodiversity in the workplace, understanding strengths, challenges, and inclusion. We've booked an hour for this webinar, and we will spend about 30 minutes on the main presentation discussing this topic, and then we'll move to questions at the end. So I'm excited to be co-presenting this very important topic with our fantastic speaker, Amy McManus. My name's Katie Williams and I'm a Senior HR Business Partner for the Kingswood Group. Just a little bit about me. I've been in my role for now over 10 years, supporting a number of HR retained clients from different industry sectors, and many of my clients I've supported since the start of my role. I also work with clients on a pay-as-you-go and project basis, and my role is completely varied from drafting employment contracts, handbooks, providing employee relations support, and any kind of queries or questions or situations that may arise in the HR life cycle for an employee. I have a personal interest in neurodiversity in the workplace, and I've personally seen an increase from my clients needing support and guidance on this area. So I'm absolutely thrilled that I have Amy with me today, who is going to be an absolute expert and talk us through this great topic. I'll just pass over to Amy to introduce herself now.
Hi guys, I'm Amy and I work for Get Set UK. Neurodiversity and disabilities has always been a very keen interest of mine. It's an absolute passion of mine. I do have a degree in special educational studies and I've been supporting employers for the last 18 months to become disability confident and just to get a bit more of an awareness around what neurodiversity is and how it impacts on workplace culture.
Thank you, Amy. Now, just to move on to GoToWebinar, this is the platform that we're using today to host this webinar. So for those of you, it's quite new for us to use this. So for everyone today, you're all muted. We can't see you or hear you. So if you do have any questions, please use the question box on the side. And also, if there are any technical questions or technical problems, please do put that in the chat box and we'll see if we can help you. So just a little bit about Kingswood Group. We are a HR consultancy. We focus on delivering HR solutions that are generally tailored to an individual business. We understand that no two organisations are the same, whether you're a small or medium-sized enterprise looking to scale up, or even if you're a larger company aiming to refine and improve existing HR processes. We tailor our work towards your needs. Our services are designed to be flexible and comprehensive, and we can support you in enhancing operational efficiency as well as staying compliant with employment law and regulations, and ultimately freeing up your time so you can focus on what matters most, growing your business and focusing on your people. So whether you need a new employee handbook or employment contract, or someone to chair a disciplinary, or even guide you through a complex employee relations issue, we're here and happy to help you. Our services can be on a retained basis, as I've mentioned, or a pay-as-you-go basis, and we work with many different companies in different parts of the country, so no area is an issue for us because we have consultants all over the country. We also offer a multitude of other services which go hand in hand with our HR offering, and I'll go through some of those later on. And just briefly, we also have a recruitment arm to our business, and we have a brilliant recruitment team that can help you fill roles with any vacancies that you do have. So now I'd like to pass back over to Amy, who will go through her presentation today.
Yeah, hi guys, so today we're going to sort of be looking at what neurodiversity means, learning about key neurodivergent conditions, exploring those workplace strengths and challenges, identifying ways to support neurodivergent staff, and recognising the benefits of a neuroinclusive culture. If you have got any questions at any point, guys, just drop it in the chat and I'll try and answer them as quick as I can. So, just as a bit of a starter, in the chat, can you give me an example of neurodiversity? Just to try and get you all talking. See if the chat function works. answers in that one. So we've got ADHD, autism. So we're getting those key ones in there yet. Dyslexia. Absolutely fantastic, guys. So while anybody else is typing, we'll move on to the next slide. So neurodiversity is a natural difference in the brain functioning. So it's neurodivergent people are individuals who think and learn differently to those who are deemed to be neurotypical. So with that, it's just where the brain works ever so slightly differently. So the way that those who are neurodivergent think and the way that they see the world is different. So quite often they can have things like sensory processing difficulties alongside a common one that we would, so for example, autism. Somebody who has autism may also have sensory processing disorder, may also have ADHD as well. It's just the way that the different brain thinks. Moving on to the next slide. So we've got some key conditions. Neurodivergence is an umbrella term, so it covers all of these ideas, all of these sort of conditions, and it also sort of has many others as well. So some of the key ones that we've probably all heard about would be autism. So it's that need for routine, the sensory sensitivity, and a very strong focus as well. You've got ADHD, where someone's got high energy, spontaneity, and executive functioning challenges as well. Dyslexia, so you get word-based processing difficulties but very strong verbal skills. And dyspraxia, which is motor and planning difficulties, but they're very creative thinkers. So with dyspraxia, it used to be known as the clumsy child. So you can see the door frame, you know where the door frame is, you've still got to walk an inch to the left. You've got dyscalculia, which is dyslexia for maths, is the best way of describing that one, because everybody's heard of dyslexia, but very few people hear about dyscalculia. And then you've got Tourette syndrome as well, which is involuntary movements and sounds, which often occurs with other conditions as well. With Tourette's, it's usually people know it by the one where people are swearing and things like that, but that actually only impacts 1% of the Tourette's population. So it is more common for them to have the physical tics and things like that. Any questions around neurodivergent conditions, or would you like me to go into any more detail about any of them? No, I think we're good to move on then. So neurodivergent individuals can bring a lot of strengths into the workplace. Quite often these are overlooked because if you hear that someone's got autism, they're quite often relegated to not being able to work and things like that, primarily due to the media. The media does not help. So for example, programs such as The Assembly or The Undateables, you often see the most severe cases of individuals with these conditions, which means that you would often have that preconceived concept that they're unable to do certain things such as living independently or working in a standard mainstream job. The actual fact of it is the fact they bring so many other skills and strengths into the workplace. For example, they could be quite innovative thinkers. They have a unique attention to detail and unique problem solving skills as well, particularly individuals with autism and ADHD. As much as people think that they can't be flexible and things like that, they get that deep hyper focus and you can get their interest into whatever it is you want them to do. They are they go so deep into it, they'll be able to tell you the ins and outs of the topic. They can face some difficulties though, for example, sensory overload, miscommunication, and a lack of flexibility. So with that sort of idea of it, that's where our reasonable adjustments would come into play. So under the Equality Act 2010, obviously we do need to provide reasonable adjustments for individuals who have got a neurodivergence or disability. So for sensory overload, it could be a case of having a quieter space for them to work. It could be the idea of being able to give them headphones so that they're able to sort of drown out that sound. It's also important to think about your lighting system as well within your offices or your workplace, primarily because a lot of individuals with that hypersensitivity to sensory overloads, they can hear the lights buzzing. So if a light bulb's about to blow, then you can hear that light buzzing, and that would then prevent them from being able to complete a task because they're distracted by that noise. So why does neurodiversity actually matter? So it is thought that 1 in 7 people, or 15% of the UK population, are thought to have a neurodivergence. That's not necessarily a factual, like a true fact, purely because a lot of individuals go without being diagnosed. They go without being able to recognise that they may have these difficulties, particularly if they're high masking. Neurodivergent teams are able to drive that creativity and performance. They're able to perform better than any other team. If you just have a neurotypical team, they all tend to think the same way. Whereas by having someone who's neurodivergent in there, just one person or two people, you're then creating that sort of diverse way of thinking. They'll think about problems outside of the box. There is also an improvement in retention and engagement. So those organisations that have neurodivergent colleagues and more diverse teams, you are more likely to be able to retain your staff because they feel valued, so they don't want to go anywhere, particularly if they've had difficulties finding jobs in the past or just not quite fitting in within the jobs. I've got a little image there for equality versus equity because a lot of people get the two mixed up. Equality would be giving everyone the same thing. So for example, with our little image there, every single person is given a box to be able to see over the fence. However, that does not necessarily mean that everybody needs that box. Equity is giving people what they need. So for example, our middle-sized person there has only got one box so that he can see over. The smallest person has got two to be able to see over the fence. You can then also have inclusion by design, which means that the fence would then be removed because then everybody can see over it anyway. So how can you guys as employers support? Having clear communication really benefits individuals because they know what they need. You can also look at the verbal versus written. So for some individuals, they prefer written communication over verbal because they're able to go back and look at that information again, and avoiding that use of jargon as well. It's also really important not to be sort of not specific with what you're saying. So rather than saying hit the ground running, can you complete this task by 1 PM on Friday would be a far better way of getting that information over. Got flexible environments as well, so having those quiet spaces, lighting and noise and routine, consider those whenever you're looking at your environment and whether it is actually inclusive. Then we've got recruitment, so making sure your job descriptions are accessible. Quite often you put in a job description and quite often it has got that jargon, it has got that hitting the ground running. What does that actually mean? You know, if you're looking at the skills and qualities that you want people to have, what does that look like? What skills and qualities do individuals actually need to have? It's also important to consider interview adjustments when doing your recruitment as well. Can you make adjustments, and are you prepared for somebody who may ask for them as well? More and more people are now asking for questions in advance. This helps them to be able to retain that information and process what they're going to say and what the question is actually asking of you. You've also got different types of support that you can put in place for individuals. So buddy systems, if someone starts, is there a person that they can contact should they have any questions, or if they just want someone just to touch base with? Having those quiet spaces again is so important, and tailoring adjustments to the individual. Reasonable adjustments, you can get a reasonable adjustments passport. This is available on the internet. There is a health adjustments passport from the government website itself, and this just, all it does is it notes down what adjustments are being asked, why they're being asked, and how often they should be reviewed. Ideally, we say to review adjustments every 6 weeks, because if an adjustment isn't working, it means that something needs to change. Disabilities can also fluctuate. So on some days you can have an individual who's really, really good, but then it hits a certain point and they're burning out, they're crashing out. So it's really important that we're reviewing that and adjusting to that. It could be a case of somebody needs the adjustment to change throughout the day. So for example, at 9 a.m, they're able to do things, they're really able to get into it. But by 3 p.m, they're burnt out, their filter isn't working because they've been masking all day. So it's really important that we're sort of looking at how we can adjust our adjustments to them. The average cost of a reasonable adjustment is actually only £75, but most of them are free or low cost. So for example, flexible working wouldn't cost a business anything. If, for example, you provide an hour's lunch break that is unpaid, do they need to take that 1 hour in one hit? I know myself, as a neurodivergent person, I really enjoy having 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon because I only need half an hour to eat my lunch. I've never taken a full hour lunch break because it doesn't work for me. Small changes can make the biggest difference to an individual. So it's really, really important and key that we're sort of looking at how we can make those adjustments and make those changes to fit those individuals. Has anybody got any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question that's come through, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the question that's been asked is, I suspect that one of the employees I have is neurodivergent. The employee's struggling at work in terms of managing their workload. Can I ask the employee directly if they are neurodivergent? And if I can, they're asking what would be your advice and approach with this employee?
So legally, I would say do not ask. However, it would thoroughly depend upon your relationship with that employee. So I've had managers where I've had that really good rapport with them and they have asked me outright, am I neurodivergent? Because we have that relationship where we've been able to do that and we are in a neuroinclusive environment with where I work. So they are considerate of that. And it is literally just are you neurodivergent? Because I want to support you. What are we struggling with? Are you struggling with anything? You know, however, legally, technically speaking, you shouldn't really ask an employee purely because it can then, particularly if they're at the interview stage or still in that onboarding stage, it could be seen that if you do need to fire them for any reason, you could be seen as being discriminatory. So what I would say is treat it like a neurotypical person. If someone is struggling, ask how you can support. That is the best way to go about it. You don't need a diagnosis to be able to support an individual. Because if someone's struggling, ideally you want to keep them, you want to retain them, because it would cost you more to get someone new in, train them up, rather than just putting those support mechanisms in place for that individual.
Okay. Interesting what you were saying, just going back as well about communication is key, particularly more so for someone that is neurodivergent. So making sure that any instructions are clear and explicit so that that person understands. And everyone's different with communication, and it's kind of how to, I suppose, like from a HR point of view, how to best support line managers that perhaps have neurodivergent employees within their team. It's giving them the advice and support of how they communicate effectively and well so that that person is supported and that they understand.
Yeah, so whenever it comes to communication, again, ask the individual. So if you've had a team meeting, I mean, technology is great. Technology is absolutely amazing nowadays in the sense that you can have a meeting, record it, and get the notes typed up automatically for you. You don't need to sit there and write in notes like you did before with notebook and pen, someone taking minutes. You can do it if you're doing it via Teams or even on your phone. You can record that meeting to get the minutes then typed up to then email over. Because then you've got both have that point of call, you both have that point of reference to be able to go, okay, in our last meeting, because managers, they're never ever only managing one person. There's always a
Mm.
team. So it's really key that if we can get those minutes and those meeting notes to be accurate and for the individual, you've both got a point of reference. At the end of the day, everybody's only human. A manager's only going to remember certain conversations. So it'd be
Yeah.
really key to be able to follow that up with something written for both the individual and the manager.
Mm. I mean, there's lots of we use Teams, you know, to record our meetings. There's other kind of things you can use out there that AI that can help you with that. So we're in a better position now, aren't we? So in your experience in the line of work that you've done, like from a personal perspective, you know, obviously making reasonable adjustments can sometimes be challenging depending on the size of the business, what they do, and because, you know, sometimes it's not always possible to make every adjustment that maybe that person needs. It's kind of, you know, what is fair, what's reasonable in the situation. Are there, like, have you got any good examples of any like reasonable adjustments an employer has made to help support a neurodivergent employee that's worked well? That, I know it's quite a wide question.
It's a very wide question because I've supported employers of all sizes. So literally your one-man band, your charities, all the way up to major organisations such as Greater Anglia. I've supported all of them throughout sort of within my career. So for me, it's always about that individual. It's so important to find out what that individual needs, because not every individual, not every neurodivergent individual is going to need the same adjustments. So, for example, if you've got two people with dyslexia, you have two individuals with dyslexia, which means that one might need a coloured overlay or for the background on Microsoft Word to change. The other one might not need that because they don't have the visual stress aspect of dyslexia. So it's very difficult to turn around and say, here's loads of reasonable adjustments, because it is down to the individual and what works for them. So for somebody with autism, for example, they might really benefit from having that structure of, right, I'm working 9 till 12 and then 12 till 1 I'm on lunch, then 1 till 5 I'm working. Whereas somebody else might turn around and go, that's just too much. I need more breaks. I need, you know, a later starting time and a later finishing time because I don't want to mask on the bus, for example. Because of it's the masking side of it, which is really, really exhausting when you've got to mask and you've got to pretend to be someone you're not effectively. So it's really difficult to be able to have that high energy and that high motivation when before you've even walked into the office, you're exhausted, you're drained, you know, and then if you've got sensory processing on top of that, it then makes it even harder.
I think as well, like for me, like, you know, talking to you, it's really opened my eyes up more to be much more aware of if someone says they've got autism or you know, they've been diagnosed with dyslexia or any of the other, you know, neurodivergent conditions that you discussed. It's then like, what do you do as that employer? How can you best support it? Where's that information and resources available? Because that's the, I think that's the challenge for an employer, is like, where do we go now? We want to help someone, we want to support them, and not all businesses have like occupational health or have the financial abilities to be able to say, well, we'll help, you know, if you've not had a formal diagnosis, well, you know, to pay for that, because that's very expensive. You know, is there any kind of resources that you'd recommend that free that employers could go to?
So if you want training on the Skills Network, there is a free level 2 understanding neurodiversity course that managers, team members, they can go on. It's fully funded in England and Wales, so it'd be worthwhile having a look at that. For actually implementing reasonable adjustments, there is a scheme called Access to Work. It's currently coming under a lot of fire because it's not a great system, but it's a system. It's there. It is there to support employers and employees. But effectively what they do is they will assess the employee once they've got the referral come through. So the employee does it themselves, and obviously the manager supports because they'll need to know the outcomes of it. But they will assess what would support that individual, and that would be looking at the working environment, that'll be having a discussion with the employee, and they will make those recommendations. And then what happens is they're able to give some money towards the reasonable adjustments. So it would then depend on the size of the employer, as to how much they would give. So for example, massive multinational companies, they're going to have to pay a bit more than your little independents, purely because they are a bigger company. They're probably turning over millions and millions of pounds, and you know, they can afford £100 or whatever it is. Whereas those smaller independents, they will be able to support them a bit more and give that money, so that they're able to buy the resources. They also pay for travel as well. So if you've got an employee who struggles with public transport, they can pay for taxis and things like that, to and from work. All it is literally you pay and then you get it reimbursed, so that they've got the receipts to prove that that's actually what it's gone on, because they're not just going to give a company £100 and not want to know where it's being spent on, if that makes sense.
Okay, just a question that's come through, Amy, on the chat, if I could ask that. In terms of small changes, and I know you talked about small changes in your presentation, but this question is saying that what small changes could a business make that would have a big impact on a neurodivergent inclusion? Is there kind of, I know you talked about some of the small changes, but is there any particular ones that a business could focus on? I think that's what the question's asking.
So for me personally, it's about having that open communication. If you can build that neuroinclusive culture where individuals want to turn around and say, I'm neurodivergent, I'm struggling, that can make a really, really big difference. Purely because by having a manager who's not automatically going to shut down, going, show me the bit of paper, because realistically 4 to 6 years to get a bit of paper to say I've got autism is a little bit unreasonable. So actually being able to have that conversation and go in, I'm really struggling, I need help, and the manager being open to that idea, and the manager being able to turn around and go, yeah, absolutely, what can we do, how can we support? Or, well, actually all I need is for one person in the team that I can touch base with every now and again, just to check my work, or just to, so I know what I'm doing is right. Because we know that managers don't have the time, we understand that managers, you're managing multiple people, but to be able to have that one person, another employee, or just someone that we can touch base with. It's also the not having expectations. So for example, during lunch times and things like that, quite often there's a big canteen full of people, so it'd be nice to not have that expectation of you have to go and sit with everybody else, otherwise you're not a team player. Let me go for a walk, let me go and sit in a quiet room, let me go and sit in my car. I've had employers do that before, where they've turned around and was like, we're a little bit worried because we've got employees sitting in their car to eat lunch. And I was like, yeah, it's quite busy in here, isn't it? It's quite noisy. I was like, you've got bright lights. It's so not having that expectation of you're not a team player if you don't come and sit in the canteen with the rest of us.
It's the awareness, isn't it? Keep coming back to it. It's the constant raising that awareness for everybody.
Yeah.
Just thinking whilst you were talking there, like, in particularly in the last 5 years, businesses have got mental health first aiders that go on training courses to make them aware of, mental health first aid in the workplace. It would be, I wonder if one day, there could be neurodivergent first aiders or something, just a point of contact to have.
So some businesses, some organisations that are slightly bigger do have neurodiversity ERGs.
Right.
So employee resource groups, just a network of individuals who have all got a neurodivergence or a disability, and they'll sort of feedback and get feedback from that group of individuals to find out how they can make the business better for those individuals.
Yeah.
Others do what's called diversity champions.
Right.
So it's a bit like your it's a bit like your mental health first aiders, but
Yeah.
they are the champions of diversity. So they'll be the ones who'll be screaming and shouting about National Inclusion Week, screaming and shouting about World what is it, People with Disabilities Day in December. And they make sure that it's at the forefront of the business's mind.
That sounds good. I didn't realise that. That sounds very positive. Yeah, yeah, no. Okay. All right. So you also mentioned about waiting times for diagnostic testing, assessments.
Yeah.
Did you say 4 to 6 years? Did I get that? Did I hear that
4 to
correctly?
6 years for a diagnosis.
Goodness, wow. So if you're, and I'll talk from experience here. So I've had situations with clients that they've had, particular issues with employees, and then generally in a meeting, the employee then kind of lets them know that they're kind of being referred to their GP because they suspect they have ADHD. Is a situation that I have had. What do you do as an employer in that situation? Like, would that employee be covered in terms of the Equality Act?
Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
with neurodivergence, you don't actually need a formal diagnosis because there is an understanding that the diagnosis system at the moment doesn't work. So for adults, it's 4 to 6 years. Even for children, it can be anywhere from 2 to 4. So it is a massive, massive waiting list. So it is that understanding that actually we do need to put the support in first, especially if an employee has turned around and said, I suspect I'm ADHD, I suspect I've got autism or any of the others, it's really important that we're sort of considering that bit of paper. It doesn't really change anything. Some
Right.
individuals go their entire lives without the diagnosis.
Mm. Wow. Well, hopefully those waiting times will reduce, because that's incredible, isn't it? Particularly like just thinking about children, if they're on a similar wait list,
Mm-hmm.
going through education and not getting the support that you need, that must be incredibly tough as well.
Yeah, so I've got 2 boys. My 7-year-old is going through the ADHD diagnosis route. So that referral's only just gone through just before the end of the year. And then I've got a 2-year-old who is non-verbal and not independently mobile. And it's only because he's non-verbal and not independently mobile that we've got so much support in place for him already. So
Right.
our health visitor has referred us to physio, occupational therapy. We've been to speech and language therapy. We've currently got a walking frame to support him to try and get him walking independently as well. But yeah, we're still waiting for the referral to go through to the community paediatrician to be able to get a diagnosis.
Wow, gosh, that is challenging, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's only the fact that I've got a good health visitor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just wanted to go back as well. Just I made some notes from your presentation. You talked about reviewing reasonable adjustments every 6 weeks,
Yeah.
which kind of that just struck a little kind of in my mind. I just thought, wow, that is quite often, but I understand now why it needs to be that often.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, don't get me wrong, when you're first putting in the reasonable adjustment, it should be reviewed every 6 weeks. However, if you find a reasonable adjustment that's working, right, a reasonable adjustment that doesn't need to be changed, just review it at your one-to-ones, however regularly they are. So I know
yeah,
some companies do it every month, some companies do it every 6 months. So whenever you're
mm,
then doing your one-to-ones, you can just slip it in. Is this reasonable adjustment that we put in place working for you now? Or do we need to adapt it slightly?
mm,
It's once you've got something in place that's working, there's no point having the meeting for the sake of a meeting, as I say. But
yeah,
it
sure,
is just trying to find that right balance, because not every neurodivergent person is going to know what adjustments work for them.
mm,
Particularly if they've only just sort of realised that they're
yeah,
neurodivergent. It's
yeah,
then that okay, so in my last workplace, I was really productive when I was doing this, this, and this, and this is what they did. Now, did that work because I'm neurodivergent, or did that work because that's who I am? So
Yeah.
I didn't realise that I didn't work well with the 1 hour lunch blocks until I sat there and tried to take an hour's lunch break.
Yeah.
And I was sat there just clock watching, because I was like, what is the point in this?
Yeah.
And that's when I spoke to my manager and we split up that lunchtime, because I didn't need it.
Yeah. Yeah. You also mentioned about recruitment, about reasonable adjustments to be made when in your recruitment practices.
Yep.
And you talked about kind of issuing the questions beforehand to candidate. Is there
Yep.
any other reasonable adjustments that you would
Yeah,
recommend?
so considering where you're conducting the interview is really key. So
Okay.
for example, making sure it's actually a quiet office, and you can't hear the noise from any other offices and things like that, because that can be quite distracting. Send out an email beforehand explaining exactly what the process is. So every single company has a different interview practice. They have different interview techniques, different ways of doing the interview. Some want a presentation, some don't. Some want you to answer scenario-based questions, others don't. So it's really important that you clear and lay out, when you're sending out emails inviting to interview, exactly what you are looking for, because otherwise anybody, neurotypical or neurodivergent, you can get lost in that system, and I don't know what I'm going in and expecting. Some employers are a little bit, they don't like the idea of giving out the questions in advance, because they think it gives someone who's neurodivergent that upper leg, because, well, I haven't got proof that they're neurodivergent, so everybody could ask for it. So what I've also suggested doing is possibly a halfway house scenario. So you send out some of the questions that you're going to ask, and then you turn around and go, however, other questions may be asked, or you may be given a scenario-based task to think about.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's that halfway house side of it,
Mm.
things like that. It's also, don't ask questions that aren't relevant to the job role. So, for example, I actually went to an interview a couple of weeks ago and I got asked, what 3 items would you take on a desert island? What has that got to do with the job? You know? And I've heard other ridiculous ones, like, what biscuit would you be? If you were a biscuit, what biscuit would you be? You know? And it's like, what? It almost feels like a trick question. And I think that's a lot of the issues with it, is the fact that it does feel like that trick question. Well, hang on a minute, why are you asking me that? What answer do I
Yeah.
need to give? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate how that can kind of, particularly like be like, why,
Yeah.
and actually throw you off the scent in terms of focusing on the important questions. But generally questions like that are a kind of a bit of an icebreaker to try and hopefully relax the person, a little bit of a fun question. But
I
yeah,
got
from
asked
your
them at the end
perspective,
of the
yeah.
interview.
Oh, okay.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't an icebreaker because it was at the end of the interview.
Oh,
And he literally
okay.
turned around and asked everybody this. He went, there's no right or wrong answer, but if you could bring 3 items to a desert island, what would they be? I was
Yeah.
like, food, water, shelter. What other answer would you want from me? You didn't say what I
Yeah.
can't bring. So,
No.
yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer there, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So in your experience of working, with businesses and everything, is there any other recommendations that you would kind of make in terms of what could help employers?
So if you think that you're already being really, really good at like embracing people with disabilities and neurodivergence, I would probably recommend signing up to the Disability Confidence Scheme. I know we've got a webinar in a couple of weeks on that as well. So it'd be really good to, if you want to get on that scheme, sort of find out how it works, what it's about, it'd be really good to get on there, because you're then promoting what you're already doing. There's very few changes that need to be made with that Disability Confidence Scheme. So you'll already just be, I'm amazing at this, I can do that. And you're really, really promoting it and advertising it. Connecting with other employers as well. So if you do need support, have a look at the Disability Confidence Scheme. There is a list of employers. So if you ever need that advice and that information, go on there and try and find an employer that's maybe local to you or you know about, and you can ask them for support as well. Quite often we can support each other within business. What else would I suggest? I can't think of any more. Just keep learning. Just keep learning. Keep making yourself and your team aware.
Yeah, it's kind of, I suppose, like you say, having maybe part of, you know, your communication in terms of, you know, I know some companies do like toolbox talks, or you know, they have company updates, or just bringing it into the conversation, you know,
Yeah,
part of normal conversation, isn't it? So that people should feel comfortable and confident to be able to talk about who they are and how they work and some of the challenges that they face, so that the business can best support them.
yeah, 100%.
Well, thank you for all of that. There isn't, if anyone has any more questions, if you want to use the chat, we've had a few through, but we've now gone through all of those questions. I'll just give it a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to see if anyone's got any questions to ask. Also, something I just thought of actually, are there any particular like links that businesses or any of our listeners can go onto to look at? Because I know ACAS do a neurodiversity in the workplace kind of booklet. Is there anything else that you can recommend?
YouTube, if you like watching videos and things like that, there's loads on YouTube about reasonable adjustments, about the Equality Act, you know, so it'd be key to sort of look up that. That'd be part of your CPD as well. Yeah, and then as I said earlier about the Skills Network, having a look at their courses, because they've got all sorts of courses. It's not just about understand neurodiversity. If you want to go really in depth into autism, for example, they've got a course specifically around autism or specifically around ADHD. They also do some great mental health ones as well. I've done loads on the Skills Network. I would always advocate for it just because it was so good as a platform to learn on, because you do it at your own pace and it's fully funded. So you can't really go wrong.
No, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, well, there aren't any more questions. So, Amy, thank you for your presentation today. That's been really insightful. We've got a couple of webinars coming up soon. The next webinar that we've got is Managing Employment Investigations and Best Practice for Compliance and Fairness. This is scheduled for next Tuesday, or the 23rd of September, 1 p.m. With my colleague Laura Wright, who will be leading on that webinar. We also have some further webinars on creating a supportive workplace culture. This is on the 1st of October at 11 a.m. And then we have a further on this series of neurodiversity, a further webinar on becoming a disability confident employer, which Amy's just touched upon. And this is scheduled for the 22nd of October at 11 a.m. So please do register and go onto our website to register for these webinars. Just a couple of more slides from myself. So here at the Kingswood Group, we do have some fantastic checklists and free assessments on our website on HR benchmarking, sexual harassment and the Employee Rights Bill. So please do take a look at our free resources on the website that we have. In addition to our HR services, we also do offer project management, HR project management services on things like 2P projects. We offer personality disc profiling for businesses, wellbeing, training on HR training courses and leadership and management, and we also partner with an employee assistance program and supplier that can help support you to introduce an employee assistance program into your business. We also partner with Breathe, which is a HR management system as well, and would be happy to talk to anyone about Breathe in further detail. We often do free demonstrations about the platform, and we also offer e-learning with another partner, and the learning bundles are on lots of different topics, not just HR. We have leadership and management, workplace safety, so health and safety, customer service. So if you would like some further details regarding our e-learning offering, then please do let us know and get in contact. So thank you again, Amy, for joining us and supporting us on this webinar today. As there's no further questions, that's the end of our webinar. So thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to hosting another webinar shortly. Thank you, everyone.